Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast, available on all platforms including YouTube if you prefer to watch. My name is Jeremy Blain, CEO of Performance Works International, Executive Director of the Transformational Leadership Acceleration Institute, and Managing Partner of Diversity Talent. My aim is to bring insights from leaders, experts, and highly talented professionals from around the world. Insights, stories, and advice from the front lines of modern leadership to engage, inspire, and mobilize progress back in the workplace. Every episode is a learning opportunity for us all. The Rethink Leadership podcast also supports charities around the world. Each episode is in aid of a cause chosen by my guests, and to date, I'm proud to say we've supported over 60 global and local great causes. Today, my guest is Julie Perkins, an entrepreneur, author, and the founder of Wyseminds, where she helps other female leaders and entrepreneurs scale, grow, and find success in their businesses. She's passionate about creating a more equitable entrepreneurial future. Her own 30-year career in business included launching and building Specsavers in Northern Europe, leading it to market dominance in the Netherlands. Now, founder of Wyseminds and author of the book The Wyseway, Julie's focus is around purpose-led business growth, with her stated mission and passion to help female entrepreneurs find purpose-led growth on their own terms. We dive into this and find best practices in startups and with founders. We uncover that having strong purpose, values, and beliefs not only underpin good culture, but take down diversity, equity, and inclusion barriers. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone has a stake, and everyone is engaged and empowered for the journey ahead. This episode is in aid of the Macmillan Nurses Charity, supporting these amazing frontline workers in their fight against cancer and in support of their care for those going through it. We've made a donation as a thank you to Julie for joining us as her charity of choice. Hi, Julie. Please introduce yourself, your journey in business, and maybe something about yourself that not many people know.
Good morning, Jeremy, and thank you very much for having me. I've had one of those great careers. I don't know how many people can say that nowadays, but I've loved every moment of it. I, for 30 years, opened up Specsavers in Europe. There were a lot of firsts there, so that was a lot of fun. And now I run my own company supporting female entrepreneurs to scale their business, grow it on their own terms, what that is for them. Something that people don't know, I'm quite an open book, so I'm not really sure, but I think I nearly became a teacher. I worked out in the States for a couple of years, and I've just fell in love with teaching. That and the sea. Nearly a marine biologist, and both are not off the cards. Life is still young.
Wow, a marine biologist. So what, was that a passion or was that something you studied?
Yeah. Well, my grandfather was in the Navy in the Second World War. He taught us to swim in the sea because we didn't have swimming pools over in Guernsey back in those days. So he used to grab us down to Havelock Bay and he taught us to swim in the sea. And I think that's the origin of my love of the sea, that world beneath us that we don't see and that we can explore. And it's probably reflective of my curiosity, explorer nature, really, the unknown. Well, not so much as unknown now, but it's very silent down there, very peaceful. I dive as well, as you can probably hear.
Yeah, well, like you say, it's all there on the cards for you still. You can step in.
That's right.
Back into that whenever you want, right?
Exactly. Anything can happen.
Great. Well, let me bring you out of the sea, back onto land and into business now. And I'm interested in that journey where you are now in supporting other entrepreneurs, other women leaders out there. And maybe before we get into the specifics, Julie, because you've got an eye on this, where are we on the gender equity journey in all of our enterprises, if you like, globally? And why is it still so important to get behind?
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a massive question. With all these strategies, it's a way of living. And of course, there are many levels to how I can answer that. But I like to have a go at it. I think that the way the world looks in terms of equality in certain areas like pay, opportunity, environment, that's something that we can measure. But really, when you ask the second part of that question about, you know, what's the benefit? What is it for? I think sometimes that overrides the sort of the tick list side of it, overrides the incredible benefit that you can have from a diverse team. So in terms of where we're at, I think over the next years we'll be seeing this, the equal pay and the things that we can measure, the things that make the headlines, blood cells, big drama cells. But in fact, if we want to really experience equality and have the benefits of equality, we have to accept that it is a journey going forward. And as much as we can have these tick lists in our corporations, etc., it's those companies that take that tick list and go deeper. What will it bring us? And I think when companies can understand this incredible power that diverse teams bring, then we are successful. Not because we make the headlines, but because we can gain more, especially in today's world where solving problems and creating growth is more than counting numbers of people. You need that diverse team in order to capture everything that's required. And I think that's what companies are still discovering. And I always like to use the example because of obviously working with very young founders in their business. If you want to see an equal team, go work with a startup in forming or survival phase, because you're there with purpose, you're there with values and energy. Nothing else matters in the room. And that's the beauty of a diverse team. And of course, a lot of the companies are bigger than looking at it that way. But if you want to see it in its purest form, go to the startup, or crisis management is another one. So really, in summary, I think, of course, equal pay and opportunities, this one will develop in. I've obviously worked in Sweden and the Nordics a lot, so I see it in its more mature form up there. But the real power is understand what a diverse team is, understand the benefits of bringing the right people together, gender, age, don't forget, the way people think. I mean, all of this is going to be making the teams of the future. And I think that's the exciting journey to be had, really. Is that a long answer? Probably.
A lot of good points in there too around that pure form being in startups and crisis management. In fact, we saw a bit of what you were talking about during the pandemic, when suddenly everybody was in the same boat, and we made some real gains in DEI and even A terms within that at leadership level right through, because we were thrown in it together and it was emergency. But we seem to have sort of taken a few steps back in some companies around this. And you're absolutely right to talk about the broader diversity lenses that are there, but we all still know that we can make some big gains on gender diversity, and if we do that, a lot of the others are brought along with it. And before we
Absolutely,
get
without
into
doubt.
your company, Wyseminds, maybe you can help me by going back into some of the best companies that you've worked with. What are they doing that makes a real difference for individual contributors and women leaders in their businesses? And particularly, what are the benefits?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just going back to that point about equality with gender, you're absolutely right. And I think the equal pay, the equal opportunities, putting just this incredible stake in the sand that is the lever for it. So if we start from that point, when we look at some of the companies that are performing well, they have a very equal level in that stake in the sand. Of course, in a startup, there's not a lot of money. There's not big differences. You're all in it together. So in a way, that's a very neutral playground. So what happens above that? Well, the beautiful thing is purpose and values. And I understand, and I've been challenged before going, okay, does it really matter? And when you look at the business of today, maybe when, it was very single dimensional, two-dimensional in terms of here is, what we make a product, we sell a product. Purpose and values might not have been so ingrained, so essential. But when you look at the diversity that now to create a product of the future, it's absolutely essential from day one, and not just to call upon when you want your own way, which I've heard before. Well, actually, our values, etc. Not like that. The way you embed it, the way the founder leads, and who you gather around for that team. And I think that's what you see in startups, is because they don't have the money, they recruit from values and belief. And that's when it's in its best form. And of course, in the past, it's the culture of the way that it works. And I think people think that's ignored in startup and early. It's not. It is early startup. It is sometimes the only thing they have to create, this incredible team. And I work with quite a lot of. I'll give you a couple of examples. I work with one woman who's putting education into lower economic countries so that people can become, self-sustainable in their own community. Now, she doesn't have money, but by sharing her beliefs and her values, she's recruited that team from beliefs and values. It doesn't mean people don't get paid, by the way. They get paid okay, but it's equal. And the power of that team and how quickly they are now accelerating because that shared belief, I think, is absolutely the power of having that equal team, of equal gender distribution as well, equal skills, etc. And that's just one example of many that we work through, especially, I think, when women will often, and I'll probably get held on this, will often take products and services that benefit community and health and well-being. And these often have a longer runway. So you have to be recruiting on values to begin with, because it doesn't spike. There's not suddenly, oh, thank goodness the money has arrived. Here, everyone receive a large amount. You have to have that belief at the beginning. But it's pretty much the powerful force, I think, of a lot of companies that I work with that are doing it very well.
Yeah, and while you were talking, I was thinking about some of the leaders in some sort of traditional multinationals that I operate with, and thinking, wow, if you could just spend some time with a startup and with a founder, and understand the power of culture, the values
Yeah.
and beliefs that sort of drive it from the beginning. And also this, I don't know, while you were talking, I sort of thought it was to call it foundership, this spirit of leadership, which
Oh,
is
I
where
love that.
everybody is much more equal, right? And
Mm.
everybody's in the same boat, got the same passion, same purpose, and driving forward. Would that be a fair
Oh,
word
it's a
I've made up?
great word. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to steal that for sure. I love that,
Well,
because
that's
that's
good.
the
Yeah,
feel of
okay,
it.
right, got it.
But that's the beautiful thing about it. And one of the challenges, which I'm sure we'll come on to with the sort of leadership, is undoing them from that equal cause at the beginning. When do you become a company that needs the support, needs a proper structure in it? And how do you do that without losing the foundership, which you can see how I put it in there for you, Jeremy, how easy it works.
It's as if you've always been using that word, actually, Julie. um, yeah, and that second stage, that startup to scale up, actually, is where those things can be lost, because suddenly we've got
Yeah.
all of these structural things that how we used to, or how businesses used to being structured, although now we're in a different century, in a different time, and we can do things differently.
Mm.
And you're right, you can't afford to lose that. But I'm interested to put you on the spot though now here,
Love
because
it.
you've referred to some leaders that aren't doing this particularly well, or organizations, but without naming names, of course, what
No.
are these sort of not so enlightened organizations or leaders doing that doesn't accelerate equity journey in all its lenses, but particularly for women? And
Yeah.
what's the impact actually and reputational effect?
I think you have to go back to how you define what equality is. And I think, I sort of mentioned it at the beginning, it's those that keep it as a process, which is the starting point. But it needs to become a strategy as important as your marketing or brand message, because people are essential now. So those that keep it coming forward, you have to start from the purpose and values and work back. So who's not doing it well? I would say it's those companies that create that start point, have the intention, and then recruit still the individual or treat as the individual. Because when you do that, you're still looking at it as an old school model. You're recruiting an individual, whereas you need to picture your journey and what team is going to be able to fulfill that journey, and how does diversity play a role in getting that done. Then once you've done that, you say, how can I have those people and how can I keep those people? And that's where all of these flexible times, or what is the need, it's all down to the individual as well. You can't have the blanket situation. So I think the companies that probably don't do it well is trying to fit it into a strategy to make it fixed. And I think we have to, obviously, the stake in the sand, which is given to us by society, and rightfully so. But how do we then work out how it's going to fit with our growth model, and then work it backwards? And when you get to the how, when you try and make it strategy, to try and get a feeling rather than making it fixed. Because if you've recruited the right people in the first place, they will do the right thing around the right boundaries, would be my viewpoint. Slightly sort of generic and political, sorry for that, but it's difficult to say right, wrong. Of course, it's not about names, but it's about the importance of working it through correctly without going, right, what's the list? What do we do? Do we give flexible hours? You have to treat individuals as the team, and you have to give them the credit for having the ability to do the right thing as well.
It's a very modern business model to be much more empowering, driving more autonomous working, breaking down those vertical hierarchies into more horizontal management principles. And you're right, it's almost the difference between a 20th century leadership stroke organizational legacy and where we are now, which has to be more adaptable and fluid because we're going so quickly. So we can't be
absolutely.
We can't be set on these lines. We have to fit this in there and what have you. But I do get the point. It's still interesting how many do need that, because it's a security blanket, I think, as well, as much as anything else.
Well,
isn't
it
it
is.
for people?
It's like with everything. You want to have a strategy that you can report on, that you can talk about. And of course, our addiction to headlines and, we're going to make this great for you and well for you. That's our addiction. But actually, what we need to do doesn't fit in a headline. We need to treat you like a human, a professional human, and we will be professional humans to you. That no one writes that headline. So we try and make it into a strategy that's going to be clear for people, where actually clarity is that beautiful relationship with personal responsibility. And if you've got the right people in, then that will naturally flow a lot better. And of course, the bigger the company gets, the more challenging that becomes. But that's all about leadership, coach, and everybody looking towards a more unified picture. Because if you're cross-functioning in terms of your project growth, your growth projects that you're working on, you need a diverse team. You know what you need. So in that way, as a leader, you have to be looking towards the people, the diverse people, and look after them to make sure they're there to be agile. Because you can't be agile if you're going, oh, right, we need to do that. Hang on a second, can you give me 3 months to go and find the people that I've lost? You can't afford to do it. You need to be on it all the time. And experience matters. So you need those people already there.
You do. And as you're talking, I realize you also practice what you preach. You set up Wyseminds specifically to support women, either entrepreneurs setting up their own business or women in business who've been on a similar journey to you as well. And so when you sort of almost repeat this as a coach, what are the fundamental principles that you guide your coaching and support behind? And how do you measure that? Because everything that you've said up to this date as well is great, as long as we can measure it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, I can understand the questions I get about, isn't purpose just that little bit of a nice to have? But when you look at what the pandemic did, and those companies that were quick to be agile, I mean, I can never bore on reading those stories. They were agile because they had a purpose embedded. So it's a really good question to do. And when founders come to me, they're often overwhelmed, frustrated, and have fallen out of love with what they do, and they don't think there's going to be a return. Well, we're sort of correct. You might have fallen out with love with what you do, but it's because you've disconnected from what you're doing. And when you were first up there, how do you bring that passion back? In order to be able to bring other people in, but reconnect yourself. So the first thing I do is make them redundant. And I think that we don't do this enough. And that, I learned from a hard mistake. I hadn't made myself redundant, I think, for about 5 years. And once you can do that, and I do it every 6 months now, come out, what am I doing? What am I doing in there? And put myself and reposition myself back in. It's a very healthy thing to do, not just for yourself, but also for the people that you've got there. And most importantly, what I find that frustration, the biggest frustration is that founders don't let go. And your company moves in a series of waves. And in the end, the founder has got their foot on both and sink. This is the very first thing we do. We do that with really going out of it, creating purpose and values, personal purpose and values. And that also helps them in their larger life, all of the roles. This is you as a parent, as a friend, as a hobby, as a work. This is you. And they've forgotten it. And once we can do that, we extract them from the company and create space and redefine their organizational purpose and values for clarity, really. And that's, if I said, that solves 80% of the problems. And then people go, really? And I go, oh, yeah. Because once the founder's out the way, funny enough, they've recruited the greatest people in the team and they can get on and do it. And I know because that happened to me in the Netherlands. So I am speaking from my own failure.
I really like the point about making yourself redundant. That speaks to me. That is about surrounding yourself with the right people based on those values and beliefs you talked about before. It's giving you the room also, or giving the entrepreneurs, the founders, the room to focus on that strategy going forward, while it can be sure that implementation, where it often fails, is grabbed by everyone and succeeds. And I'm assuming as well, once those people that you work with, once they start to see that and they've solved, like you say, 80% of them have solved this problem potentially,
Yeah.
then they become really motivated and they move on. It's high energy, it's fast. And we know at leadership level over the last few years that there is kind of almost an epidemic of burnout, of anxieties, of lack of balance, because we're juggling so many balls at the moment transformationally. So at the very start, when you do this, when you want those people that you work with to really kind of excel and go forward, but how do you help them maintain the balance of drive with the balance of well-being, life work balance, and why is it an important factor to consider kind of almost from day one?
I mean, from day one, when entrepreneur founder, when they feel overwhelmed, it's never because they've got too much work on. Entrepreneurs are driven. They're used to being busy. That's what they want. They love that. So when you take them back out to do their purpose and their values and create, who am I? Oh my gosh, who am I in life? And what do I believe? What's the lens through which I see life? And I said, but that's for all of your roles. And quite often we'll spend time looking at them, how they transpose themselves into their family life through their values, through their friends. And it helps them balance out all of the roles they have in their life. That's number one. And then number two, I have to admit, we do myths from the past that have been given to us about success. And what do we see from our parents? What do we see from society, or how we've been brought up? that makes us in any way say that success in business shouldn't be ours. And the combination of the two is a very interesting equation, because, you know, when you look at it, sometimes what we see and what we feel is subconsciously there. So when someone's in a business and we say, hey, do you want to take on 2 members of staff? They're like, oh my gosh. And quite often that doesn't mimic what we see as a child, what we see as that. It's not psychology, it's just recognition that success should be theirs of what they've seen in the past. How can they use that to their benefit, but make sure that it's not a barrier, especially for women, and that sort of that maybe old school conservative way in their house that they've seen. Why should that success be theirs? Why do they not have to repeat the pattern that they've seen growing up? And that's a really big one. That's a money mindset. And money's not just cash, by the way. Money value mindset. The
Yeah,
combination is good.
and when you're talking there, of course, as a man and as somebody who is an advocate for male allyship and of course
Yeah.
advocacy in business, it's a really important point that's often missed. And how if I play that to you, then how do you work with organizations with their male leaders or the male members of staff to encourage that kind of allyship and strong action orientated advocacy, if you like, for gender equity in their business, but also making sure that balance is there for everyone?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back, you know, don't mean to repeat myself, it goes back to the shared purpose and the values and seeking to understand each other. And I work with quite a few dual founders that are one's female, one's male, and how they can come together united in order to make the benefit of both of their roles and both of their approaches. And we often talk about women's confidence in that compared to more male confidence. But really, the confidence is an outcome of questioning, what are they doing, where are they contributing enough? So I think we divide roles and tasks very quickly in those founders. So everyone's very, very clear, but we unite on the vision, the purpose, and the values, so that in our meetings, I sort of coach them to talk about the journey rather than the individual contribution, which quite often in a partnership, I always say, you know, if your partner asks you ask your partner to put the bins out, you're like, can you put the bins out? And they go, yeah, okay, I'll do it some ever. You know, it's like that. It's constant nag, or whatever side of the partnership. But really, if you say the reason why I ask you to put the bins out is so we can keep a clean house, etc., etc., and you explain that reason, a very simple example to how to build the relationship so that they don't challenge each other at the wrong level. And I think that's all about developing the respect through contribution, through values, where actually relationships are formed, rather than trying to avoid going, have you done? Have you done? Because that's the power of it. And I think that's when you understand where you are, how it can come together, which starts off as a healthier way to go. If you've got the right partnership, the right people, you don't have to say, have you done? You just have to be talking about the outcome. People know what they need to do. And that to me would be the biggest one. It's got to be personal purpose, values, and how you connect as people. And is it about male, female, or is it about respective connection that everybody can play the keyboard of all the leadership traits? We've all got feminine and masculine traits. In fact, my mother has a lot more masculine traits than my father. You know, I've been brought up in a big entrepreneurial family, so I've seen that equality. And I think with confidence, knowing where you sit, and a strong relationship, which lucky to say they have a very lovely marriage, with a strong relationship, there's that automatic respect. You know, my dad doesn't go to mum, have you done this? Well, he wouldn't dare, but you know what I mean? So it's all about that self-respect. And that's what we're trying to do in the workplace, and have good conversations, ask the right questions, the right level. And that would be my sort of greatest summary on that one, Jeremy.
As you're talking there, I'm thinking diversity, equity, inclusion shouldn't even be a thing when we're talking about it. If we could replace that with purpose, values, and belief and talk that language rather than the language of DE and I, maybe actually would make more progress, thanks to how you've articulated that.
Yeah.
And because we're all on the same page, as you see, and we see that happening, going right back to what you said at first, to the founders and startups. So as we draw this to a close, there's plenty of food for thought here, Julie. So
Yeah.
if I could pin you down to 3 pieces of advice for those tuning in to accelerate progress, what would they be?
Well, definitely your own voice, personal purpose and values, and really spend time. This isn't a tick list. It's not a course. It's just spend time understanding what they are and how you use them in all roles of your life. And actually, I encourage a lot of journaling to understand that's how you create balance, by respecting all of those roles and using you and celebrating you in all of the roles in life. So that would be number one, for sure. How do you take decisions? The lens through which you see life. And then once you've done that, try and do it for as many people as you work with. It does help. But it's about creating the space between you and the daily task, the monthly task, and growth programs. Try and really uplift that vision, because that's when you can be a leader of curiosity. And that's when everybody's on that equal page. Keep curious and keep towards the vision of change that you're going for. And this will give you this way of thinking that makes you need a diverse team. If you're in the everyday, I'll keep on going, I'm in my safe zone. But if you keep curious, you open up like an entrepreneur, you open up curiosity, and that's powerful. That's when people are at their best. Definitely number 2, for sure. And I think put a value on purpose. Now, this is always my little controversy in life, but during lockdown, myself, a behavioral psychologist and a financial consultant, locked ourselves in our own individual ticks, for example, and we created a way of calculating the value of purpose. Not that it's about money, but when you have misalignment of key growth drivers like purpose, customer, team, how you embed purpose in, it starts to affect financially. And if you think about it, even a simple example, if you're not aligned all on customer and how you serve that customer from beginning to end, effect on cost of sales, on the potential sales, on repeat, on loyalty, it's got a huge financial success. But it has to be on purpose. A lot of people go, oh yeah, I'll measure it here. No, you have to measure the change that you're trying to make. And that would be my number 3.
Yeah, and parts of purpose topping and tailing those 3 as well, with that values and beliefs as a strong theme. And I totally buy into the curiosity point. In fact, there was at the beginning of the previous season of these podcasts, I had Stefan van Hooijdonk, who is the founder of the Curiosity Institute.
All right,
I was going to
nice.
say he's all over this. So ever since then, I feel absolutely the curiosity muscle
Yeah.
is not used enough, and should be. So look, Julie, thank you so much for joining me. I'm absolutely sure those listening or watching on YouTube will want to continue the discussion, find out more. How do they do that?
Well, I've got a website, wyseminds.com. I'm wise with a Y, because a young person told me I sounded too old with an I, which I had to respect. Of course, LinkedIn, and reach out. You can even have a go at our growth questionnaire on site. It's completely free, and it just shows you the power of your current alignment to purpose. And as you probably listened to, that's something I'm quite passionate about.
It certainly is, and that's definitely a great action for everybody to do, to get to wyseminds.com and take a look at that. Julie, thanks very much for joining me. It's been great. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. Please like, comment, and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.